So here I am, Matt Boon, Senior Research Director at Adapt, in conversation with Nick Flood, VP and MD for IBM here in Australia. It's interesting because so many organizations we talk to, and of course you do, are going through their own sort of transformation journeys. They need to accelerate modernization, innovation. We'll talk more about that as we go through the conversation in detail. Now, IBM, very large global organization, very rich history, but of course, IBM itself has been through lots of transformation and change over the decades. Perhaps just to kind of kick things off, what does IBM to you today actually look like?
It's a great question, Matt, and I think you touched on a really important point around that history of change. So IBM's 113 years old, having been founded in East Coast, the US, and our story is around restless reinvention. We've been there from the dawn of weighing machines to typewriters to mainframe technology, and just yesterday we launched our latest generation quantum system. So the company's history is one of restless reinvention. The IBM of today aspires to be the world's most trusted hybrid cloud and AI company. And we want to bring that to life in the Australian market as we do around the world through the power of both ourselves, of course, but also with the influence and contributions of a partner network.
Mhm. Great point. You brought into play the AI word there, Nick, and just I guess very briefly, so many conversations right now come back to AI and the benefits it can bring. I guess just from your perspective, if you think about artificial intelligence, without getting into great detail, um, are organizations really grasping the full potential of it, do you think, or have we got a long way to go?
I do think that there's a long way to go, Matt. I think that the general availability of ChatGPT 4 about November of last year, 13 months ago, just put it on everyone's mind. And there's not a barbecue conversation, a boardroom meeting, a client presentation where the topic isn't raised. I think that the landscape, though, is yet to find its level. IBM have a unique view on generative AI, where we believe that the world that we're going to inhabit is very multimodal. So there's a lot of monolithic large language models like ChatGPT, for example. Our view is that organizations will want to create smaller, more specifically focused generative AI deployments, and to be hybrid in terms of where are they going to run those models and which vendors are they going to partner with. IBM have perhaps through trial and error embraced this notion that no one company, even of IBM's stature and history, can do it all for every organization. So that multi-mode hybrid approach is where we see the generative AI discussion about to go.
Mhm. And that's absolutely what we're seeing Adapt at the moment as well, Nick, to be honest with you, is that organizations themselves and users are looking for not just individual vendors, but if you like, sort of consortiums, partnerships to help them really deliver on that promise as well.
I completely see that too, Matt. I think the complexity that's out there to avoid the client having to be the integrator of that, though, is the downside to that, and hence why the partnerships around IBM and our work with Adapt is being so relevant. As you take those consortia propositions forward, how do you dial them in with insight prior to approaching the customer is absolutely invaluable.
Okay, right. So we'll just dive now into, I want to sort of talk a bit more about modernization and innovation.
Mhm.
So we start with the modernization piece first. Many organizations, just here in Australia, but globally as well, have been on the sort of digital transformation journeys for many years. Many companies are kind of just starting, others are some way down the path. But what we do see here at Adapt locally is that at best organizations telling us they're about 50% digitized or effectively
Mhm.
digitized. And again, they're probably about 46, 48% modernized from an infrastructure point of view. So we've still got a
Mm.
long way to go, even despite all these investments.
Mm.
What's holding us back, Nick? I mean, what are the reasons that we're really not accelerating that modernization, if you like?
Matt, I think the paradigm for digital modernization or technology modernization in the past was often framed around these multi-billion-dollar upfront expenditures before the benefits would start flowing. And there would be an ROI, but it would be over a multi-year business case. I think there's been so many visible failures of those types of projects that a lot of decision makers and the financiers of those modernisation projects are scrutinising spend and are looking for approaches which are much more incremental, where benefits can be harvested along the way rather than continue investing, and then the benefits will flow. So I think that's definitely the downside, or the projects that have gone off the rails has certainly been a derailment factor. There's also a macroeconomic environment There's pressure on supply chains. There's inflation across the economy. That's serving to ensure organisations tighten the belt, and the budgets that were once available are no longer there. That, in turn, is making it a far more competitive environment, and the need to be very dialed into a proposition that will resonate with your constituents is more profound now than it has been in any point in my 15-year experience at IBM.
That's great points, isn't it? Because when we think about this, incremental approach, as you say, certainly in a lot of conversations we're seeing. I had a conversation with a large gaming organisation, and the head of digital there said he was going into the leadership team to ask for several $1 million to invest in AI and automation. Basic response was he got 40,000. Proof that it works.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of the mindset that's really creeping in at the moment in many ways.
I think so too, Matt. And I think that technology is now advancing so swiftly that it's serving to reframe a lot of the decisions that have been made. One of our great clients, they speak around a specific application that they have that's really at the heart of their business, and it has tens of millions of lines of code to that specific application. In fact, it's about twice the number of lines of code that are in the F-35 stealth fighter jet.
Wow.
and their approach to modernisation was to rewrite that, recompile it into modern languages. But you just wind the clock back just a couple of months ago, and generative AI has come on the scene, and that holds the promise to, in an automated way, without human involvement, to do a lot of that heavy lifting. So I think that clients and organisations across the world, as they are here in Australia, are taking a more cautious approach because they're seeing that technology is advancing and it's completely resetting the premise that a lot of their business cases were set upon.
So we now sort of shift gear a little bit to innovation. A very big word, hard to cover in sort of a few minutes, but we're looking at that sort of modernisation angle. What we see within the local marketplace is right now, according to the Global Innovation Index, the results came out in October. Australia ranked about 24th. I think it's kind of flat year on year. We've slid over the years, that kind of thing, kind of bump along up and down. But when we think about innovation and when Adapt surveyed several hundred CIOs this year, they told us that at best they've got 6% of their IT budget specifically assigned to innovation. So we need to accelerate innovation, yet we're not necessarily, I would say almost we don't really have the luxury to invest specifically towards innovation. So how can we kind of shift that needle? I'm really interested, particularly, we think about conversations you have with your people internally. How can we sort of shift the needle around innovation from being aspirational, if you like, to achievable within organisations?
Yep, Matt, firstly, what you shared really resonates. I'm fortunate to be a CEO member of the Business Council of Australia, and there's not a boardroom meeting that we're in where Australia's competitiveness, Australia's productivity doesn't come to light, and that raises real challenges and concerns around whether Australia can sustain this fantastic egalitarian society, being the lifestyle superpower of the world. So it's a paradox that there's an acknowledgement that without innovation, we're not going to lift productivity, we're not going to be competitive on the global stage, whilst at the same time there seems to be a shortfall of funding appropriations being made available to pursue innovation. The work that we're trying to do to overcome that, and the organisations that I see to be squaring that circle most effectively, are those that empower their line of business teams to come forward with practical propositions based upon their knowledge around how work gets done in the organisation, where they've done the work with an entrepreneurial spirit to identify how, through the application of technology, work can get done better to deliver real benefits to the clients, the citizens, the constituents that they serve. What we're doing at IBM is really informing and lifting the capacity of our frontline people through the involvement of great partners like Adapt to be able to engage end users on those sorts of propositions. Why investing in technology, why investing in innovation can deliver a quick ROI, and how it can drive sustainable performance for their organisation.
Great point, isn't it? Because we think about that need to sort of raise innovation at the national level. I think what you're saying here is it really needs to start at that organisational level. We can't just keep blaming the government, right? That we need to accelerate innovation. It comes down to us as leaders within business.
Absolutely. And what's at stake is the Australian way of life. But there's no panacea to this. All organisations, whether you're selling to supplying services, technology to an end user organisation, and those organisations themselves need to collectively lean into this paradox such that we can reclaim our position around national competitiveness. We can be increasing our position on those global innovation indexes.
Fantastic.
Mm.
Just talking a little bit on the sort of, I guess, the cost side of things at the moment, the budgetary issue, that sort of thing as well. I was talking to the CTO of a very large bank, one of the biggest banks, and I said to him, "What's on your mind at the moment?" He said, "Matt, saving money." Right, those were two words that he said to me. Obviously, it's a lot more, but we kind of talked about that a bit more. But what we see here at Adapt is that while about 50% of organisations expect to increase expenditure in IT next year, in fact, CFOs told us they're going to increase budgets by about 15% overall towards technology. There's still about a quarter of organisations are going to pull back, and cut back on expenditure as well. How do we really sort of, if you like, navigate this kind of very sort of choppy environment at the moment, if you like? And I think in many ways, you talked earlier on about that sort of incremental approach, which is really important. But when we consider the challenges organisations face and the budget squeezes they have, do we need to almost rethink how we measure the value of technology? Always we have ROI, TCO, that's what, is it much more now about getting the value, understanding the value from these investments?
Matt, there's a lot in that, and again, it resonates really profoundly. I think across the board, organisations in the public and private sector are realising that they've got surging costs and expenditure on ICT. Some of the promise of their projects, whether to move to a hyperscale cloud provider, for example, aren't being realised, and they're actually seeing that whilst there are some benefits, costs are becoming increasingly difficult to contain. While there's a broad understanding, I think it's the minority of organisations that are doing the analysis best to actually orientate themselves to the situation they're in and to go really deep into where in that total expenditure are they out of line with their industry peers or the benchmark for an organisation of their size, their scale, their type of operation. That to me is the work where we're partnering so strongly with. Because Adapt have got that voice of the client, and we can use that to inform our engagement with end users to say, yes, your ICT spend is growing at an unsustainable rate, and across that environment, here are the particular niches of spend where you're out of whack. And that really helps us prioritise and focus the engagement around where the low-hanging fruit is. And we believe in IBM in the flywheel effect, whether that's around culture initiatives, employee engagement initiatives, or work with our end user clients, that if we can get in early, we can prove some successes, have some early wins, the flywheel will start to take hold, and then we'll be invited to expand that set of collaborations elsewhere. And that, to me, is really the nexus of the partnership that we have with Adapt. It allows us to be hyper-focused around where we engage our client on specific propositions where we can deliver the most value most swiftly.
One other thing I just wanted to touch on, Nick, as well, is that, and you and I have spoken about this a few times, and you touched on, obviously, AI, generative AI earlier on. There's lots of kind of, I guess, if you like, misunderstandings within many organisations what it means. So I'll give you an example of this. I was doing a round table with a group of CX leaders from finance organisations just this week, and we were talking about AI in general. And one of them said that the challenge we have internally is really getting the education levels around Gen AI at kind of a table stakes level. And a specific use case he gave was I walked into the board, and these were 12 peers here. He said, and not a word of a lie. I walked in, and one of the board members put the hand up and said, "Show it to me." And he said, "What? Show me the AI." And so we kind of got organisations dealing with this sort of conversation. So, what do we need to do to raise the level of awareness around some of these things, do you think, within organisations?
I'm seeing this trend myself, Matt. I think people, to a large extent, still see AI as this distinct pillar that's neatly contained, and it's just a thing in and of itself. The best organisations or the leading organisations in Australia get that AI is going to come to be ingrained and immersed into all different categories of their ICT operation. How can AI be used to do cybersecurity better, to help cybersecurity engineers to detect where the threats actually are and to automatically intervene when those threats arise? So I think that organisations need to grasp that AI is going to become absolutely inseparable to each of those other categories, and it is also going to become inseparable to the professions and how work gets done across the organisation. The quicker that an organisation can come to that realisation, I think the faster that they can gain the benefits that AI promises.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think about the year ahead, and we've talked a lot
Yep.
about a lot of different areas that I think even though there are so many challenges ahead, the world's not
Yep.
an easy place at the moment. I think hopefully you'll agree there's a lot of opportunity if we kind of work collectively around a lot of these things.
Absolutely. If you think about Australia's macro standing around productivity or competitiveness, as I spoke to earlier, AI and automation technologies, they hold the promise for Australia to change the trajectory that we're on. Our demography has got issues in it. We've got an aging population. Those people are getting to a point in their life where they'll become burdensome on the global economy. There'll be fewer people in the higher tax-paying period of their lives. However, technology is advanced to the point where we can avoid some of the pitfalls that our demography would otherwise present to the nation.